Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Ruchakudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is basically various topics, dated February 10th, 2023, the year of the hopeful prophecies coming to pass of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. I really don't have much to go into, so I'll go as long as the Spirit allows me to. I just have one particular point to bring out. In this video, the Elder Pastor did scrutinize everything. And I just want to make mention of that. And if the Spirit leads me anywhere else, then, you know, Lord's will be surfing in the Spirit, baby. All right, so pretty much this video is based off of the heady upstart Naquam, which that's a Hebrew word. I wonder where he got the Hebrew from, but that's neither here nor there. He's going into the book of 2nd Ezra, the 11th chapter, I believe he's in, and he's breaking down that when it speaks about the whole world, that eagle conquered that is talking about here in America, and that is not the truth, because that prophecy in 2nd Ezra 11 and 12 have already been fulfilled. And Elder Pastor covered it with Daniel the 7th chapter. But what I want to do is I want to go to a precept in the New Testament that brings the same thing out. But the Greek word that they have there should be a different word, but, you know, we'll scrutinize that, you know. Oh, by the way, the word scrutinize, which means to investigate, search. When you read the Spanish word in the book of St. John, the 5th chapter, the 39th verse, where it says, search the scriptures, it says escudriñar, something like that, escudriñar, which means to scrutinize. You know, so that's what scrutinize is, to search thoroughly. You know, like they say, leave no rock unturned. So let's get into it. I'm just going to make a couple of points here and then jump around a little bit and then hit that other point and take it from there. The 2nd Ezra 11:1, then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle. That eagle is a representation of the ancient Roman Empire, which had 12 feathered wings, and those 12 feathers represent the Caesars, from Julius Caesar, who was the first Caesar, all the way until Domitian, which was the last ruler of the Edomite Caesars and a member of the Flavian dynasty. And when Vespasian took over, that was the beginning of the Flavian dynasty and the ending of the Claudian dynasty, as they call it. All right, and the three heads, which is a triumvirate, which the word triumvirate simply means three men, you know, or three men ruling. Tri is three. Virum or vira is where you get the word virile, which is man, the three men or three men ruling. And that was the first triumvirate, which was Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. Okay. It says, and I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her and were gathered together. Now, when they see this word over all the earth, they get excited because they think it's talking about the whole entire planet, and it's not, depending on the context, you know, that is used. And this is why everything must be kept in context. Now, he tried to curse us out, because he said that in the book of Genesis, the 49th chapter, when Jacob told or gave a blessing to his sons, it said the last days, that it's not talking about the last days. You know, it's talking about another period of time. But then here he'll read this over all the earth, and all of a sudden now this is talking about the whole earth. No, my man. It's not talking about the whole entire earth. It's talking about what they call the known world, which we're going to get into that. So I typed in the known world meaning. It says known world may refer to the extent of geographic knowledge of a given culture at a given historical period. See History of Geography. Early world maps lists a number of maps showing the known world from the perspective of various historical periods. So at that time, the knowledge of that particular empire and the extremities of that empire, that was the known world back then. Anything outside of the Roman world or anything outside of those conquered worlds like the Assyrian, Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire were considered barbaric or barbarian or not civilized because their laws and cultures did not reflect the laws and cultures of the Roman Empire. No, they were not as organized as the Roman Empire, which had the Appian Road, had roads, it had marketplaces, it had shipping docks, it had taxes that they would, put upon people. So it was structured, so they considered anything else outside of that weren't structured like them barbaric, or no man's land. All right, so I think that was it on that. So what we got here is the Roman Empire. This was the extent, and I believe the extent of this was in 117 AD. No, this is the as big as the empire got. But the Roman Empire in general controlled all of the lands, especially the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea, this being the Mediterranean Sea. And they controlled all of the coastlands and all of the, islands, whether they were the bigger islands or the sporadic. What they call sporadic goes back to the word sporadic because they were scattered all over the place. And these were the places where they would send, these were like the penal colonies where they would send somebody. Just think of it as almost like solitary confinement, without being solitary, off on the island, just like Alcatraz. All right, so they controlled the known world at the time, with the seaports. Because when you controlled this region, this whole region, then you were making money. You were getting paid. You were paid. Because all of these were where they had the shipping ports at were a way of making money, which is known through commerce. Now, if you notice here, this was pretty much desert down in this area. And, there wasn't really much to be had there. But in the rest of the Roman Empire, you had marketplaces, you had shipping docks, you had a sale of whatever, whether it was slaves, whether it was, goods, spices, lumber, fruits, vegetables, cattle, so on and so forth, jewelry. Whatever the merchants had, that's how they would, make their money. All right, so this would be known as the known world in the ancient times. And prior to the Romans having it, the Greeks had some of this land. Then you had the Medo-Persians that had some of this land. You had the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire that controlled this land. That's why when you type in Assyrian Empire, Babylonian Empire, and you put in maps, they're going to show you that they had some of this land controlled. All right, because that was the so-called known world. All right, and let's go on. It says, I typed in no man's land. It says disputed ground between the front lines of trenches of two opposing armies. That's something going into something else. An indeterminate or undefined place or state, right? That's where there was no boundaries. It was not organized like the Roman Empire and the empires before it. It says land or area that is unowned, uninhabited, or undesirable. All right, and we're gonna get into that. And I think that was it on that. All right, so as you see here, this is called barbarian routes, and you have barbarian routes all throughout, and eventually prior to this, because this is 410 AD, and prior to all of this, you still had these routes, but prior to this, the Roman Empire conquered all of this, and this is when they were, falling, and then they had all of this area. This was the so-called known world, and anything outside of that was considered no man's land or undesirable because the barbarians had it. They were not set up or organized like the ancient Roman Empire. Now, I wasn't sure where it was at, but I found out because I thought that they had the something called the Hadrian Wall. I thought they had it somewhere around here, but actually the Hadrian Wall was in the UK, and there was a wall that they built across this whole region here on the top here. And what happened was, what they did was they cut off access by that wall from the Scots, you know, which you had a lot of Jakes, you know, that were among the Scots, all right? So that's why they built that wall, to cut off those barbarians, as they called them, from crossing into the land of England that they had conquered at that time. And all of these lands, you know, they were not pretty much conquerable, you know, because they were just spread out, you know, and those barbarians, they didn't fight like the Romans fought. The Romans fought in groups, you know, in formation. These are barbarians, they fought pretty much, you know, like guerrilla warfare, so to speak. All right, so then I put in how long was the Hadrian's Wall? Hadrian's Wall was 80 Roman miles, 73 and a half modern miles, or 117 kilometers long. Its width and height dependent on the construction materials which were available nearby east of the river Earthing. The wall was made from brick, shaped stone, blah, 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 right? Why did the Romans stop at the Hadrian's Wall? In Hadrian's words, they wanted to separate Romans from the barbarians to the north. Scholars believe the wall may have also served as a means of restricting immigration and smuggling into and out of the Roman territory. Okay? So that's just one example. So this is how they viewed, you know, the rest of the world as barbarians. So just bear with me 1 second. All right, now, what I want to get into real quick is the book of Acts 21 and 39 with the Apostle Paul. It says, "But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarshish." Now, if you know where Tarshish is, right, I don't think I have. Let's go. We go to Tarshish, which is in the Bible, which is in so-called Turkey today. Let's go to images. And you have here, I'm not sure how big this one's going to be. Okay, good, beautiful. You see right here, this is Cilicia, this is Tarshish. This is where the Apostle Paul was born and raised. Born and raised in the streets of Brooklyn. Salaka, inside joke. So, as he stated, he said, but Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarshish, a city of Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city. Right? And I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. Now, when we look up this word mean city, right, which I looked it up before and I looked it up earlier, the word mean is asemos. Asemos means unmarked or unstamped, just like the so-called no man's lands or the barbaric lands. So those lands were not a part of the known world at the time. Of money, unknown, of no mark, insignificant, ignoble, right? So they were not noble, you know, but those cities that were conquered by the Romans, when the Romans put their influence on them and set them up in the organization of the Roman Empire, then they were considered to be noble because of the organization that was set up or established. All right, they had a law, they had taxes, so on and so forth. This is why, let me see, was there any more to this? Okay, so that was it on that. Let me leave that open just in case we go back. So which leads us, dealing with the taxes, leads us to the book of Luke 2:1. It says, and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus. This was the Augustus Caesar that ruled, you know, right after Julius Caesar, which he was actually, I believe that was his nephew that he reared up. And they said that he was one of the best, you know, emperors, because he pretty much established the way that the Roman Empire, you know, ran. different laws he set up in place. I believe he set up a fire brigade and many other things that set in motion the what's the word I'm looking for? The progression, I guess, for lack of words. The benefit, of the kingdom. And the things that he set up in place benefited them. So Caesar Augustus, right, says that all the world should be taxed. Now, when we look up the word "all the world" here, it goes into the Greek word oikomene, which means the whole inhabited earth. The word really should have been cosmos, which the word cosmos is an organization, and an organization is more fitting, to this scripture, because the word oikomene means the whole inhabited earth. Another word is gay or gi or geo, as we read in the book of Revelation, the 3rd chapter. All right. So this is why it's important to know the definition of the word world, because these Israelites out here, they get excited when they see the word world in the Old and the New Testament, and they equate it to the same word all throughout without understanding the context. But then when somebody brings out John 3:16, they'll go to John 17:9 and say that he prayed for them, he prayed not for the world. And then they may even go into the Greek word, the Greek word there, to prove their point. But when we use the Greek or the Hebrew to prove our point, they could never stay in the English language. They always got to go to the Paleo Hebrew or the Koine Greek. See the double standard? But anyway, oikomene, and this is why it says this. Oikeo, which goes back to the word oikos, which means house, or in this case to dwell. And gay or gi is earth. So oikomene, the gi part at the end, or mene, right? Actually, it's two is a compound word, house, earth, or earth house, which is the whole inhabited earth, right? It says the inhabited earth, which that's true, the portion of the earth inhabited by the Greeks in distinction from the lands of the barbarians, which they're using it for that, but really a better word would have been the word cosmos, because the word cosmos, this would fit under an organization. Like you have the cosmos of the stars, or you have the cosmos of the sea. You had the different sea life. You have the cosmos of the animal world. You have the cosmos of fruit. You have the cosmos of Israel. You have the cosmos of the nations, and each nation had their own organization within them of laws, statutes, commandments, religions that they followed, according to their forefathers and the gods and the idols that they worshipped. Okay, then it says the Roman Empire, all the subjects of the empire, which this would be better understood by the word cosmos. But here, for some reason, they have the word oikomene. So this is what is meant in the book of 2nd Ezra when it said that they had control over all the earth. Because when we read back in here, 2nd Ezra 11:2, it says, and I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, meaning the known world, because we know by looking at the map, by looking at these maps, that this is the area that the Romans conquered, and anywhere where they had set up, garrisons, so on and so forth, and established their laws and established their culture, established their language, established the taxation, of those lands. That's what belonged to them. All right. So that's the whole world that it's speaking about, because this region goes, was being fought back and forth by all these different nations. Let's see what it says for the. Let's see what happens when we type in Assyrian Empire map. Let's see what comes up. Okay, you see here. This is the Assyrian Empire map, right? And as you can see, this was what they had conquered. And they have part of this region, which eventually, when they fell, went to who? Went to the Babylonians. Babylonian Babylonian Empire map. Here we go. Let's see if this is not too small. Okay, see, they took over the area of the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrian Empire owned all of this, and then when the Babylonians came into play, or when the kingdom of Babylon came into play, they took over those regions. Then we type in Middle Persian Empire, Middle Persian Empire map. What do we have? They conquered a little more, but it was what? Some of the same areas that were owned by the Assyrians and the Babylonians, but then they moved further out into Egypt, over here, which this is today known as Turkey. You have Cilicia, which this is where the Apostle Paul was born, in Tarshish, right? So this was their empire. This was the Middle Persian Empire, all right? So because the Medes came up first, they fought, but the Persians were in there, and the Persians ruled jointly with them, but they became the rulers over the Medes, so they became greater, even though the Medes were there first. All right, then we type in, let's type in Greek Empire map, and what do we have? The Alexander the Greek conquered the known world from the Middle Persians, and look, he extended, because they were as far as here in Egypt, so he extended his empire to Thrace, Macedonia, Libya. So this would be known as the known world at the time. All right, then you have the Roman Empire, and they conquered the Greeks, because the Greeks were absorbed into them around 25 BC, if I'm not mistaken. The last ruler was Ptolemy the 13th, and then you had Cleopatra the 7th. And by around 25 BC, that's when the Greek Empire was absorbed or joined or absorbed into the Roman Empire. And they not only absorbed them, but they also absorbed all of these different, nations around here, which they were calling, some of them were being called Germanic tribes. This is why you have maps that have, let's see if I could find that map. You had the Goths, the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths. You had the Franks, the Alemanni, Suebi, Lombards, Burgundians, Anglo-Saxons, Jutes, Vandals, Huns. So these were some of those barbaric tribes that they were conquering. You also had the Picts, the Scots, so on and so forth. And that's, they took their lands here, and then they extended from the known world, they extended and took all of this region here and controlled the whole of the Mediterranean Sea. And this was the extent of their empire at its height. And this is all they really needed. Now, when Alexander reigned, he wanted to keep going this way. He just wanted to keep conquering because he had a spirit on him to do that. But eventually, at a young age, he died. Why? Because that was prophecy. He could only go so far, and his men started to rebel against him because they didn't want to go any further. They felt that they had conquered enough. They just wanted to go back. But he just had that spirit of war on him, because that's the spirit the Lord had in him. And eventually what happened? He died at the age of around 32 or so. All right, so this is what's meant as the known world. So when it says that they had sway, or their wings spread over all the earth, the ancient Roman Empire did not have sway over the whole entire planet. They only had sway over the known world at the time. All right, it says, and all the winds of the air blew on her and were gathered together, because Rome, like America, was also a gigantic melting pot. And I'm pretty sure if you type in that Rome a melting pot, I'm pretty sure it'll come up that Rome was actually a melting pot. Let's just type that in, just curious. All was Rome a melting pot? Even in antiquity, Rome was a melting pot of different cultures, see? In future studies, the research hoped to expand the geographic range of ancient DNA they can sample, blah, 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 whatever. So Rome was a melting pot, you know. So America is mirroring that, but this scripture here is not talking about America. It's talking about ancient Rome. And then when we jump down to what verse was that? 38, it says, Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee. It says, Are not thou that remainest of the four beasts which I made to reign in my world? See, because that was the known world at the time, that the end of their times might come through them, right? Because eventually, when the Roman Empire came to power, they had their glory, they had their rise, but then they had their fall, you know. And there are many different things that happened in Rome that made them fall. And this is why in Revelation 13 it speaks about that they were wounded as it were to death. Okay, it says, and the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past. And what happened? They also absolved or took over all of the lands that the other nations had, and eventually they conquered more. All right, it says, and had power over the world with great fearfulness. That goes back into the prophecy in Daniel 7, where it speaks about they had great iron teeth and stamped the residue, you know, with the feet thereof. And over the whole compass of the earth, with much wicked oppression. So pretty much this is when they conquered the known world, as you see here, and as you see in other maps. This is just the extent. And when you went to war with Rome, you had to really think, do I really want to go to war with these people? Because they were a force to be reckoned with. This is why in this region around here, somewhere, you know, you had the general Laenus, I forget he had three names, and he told Antiochus Epiphanes that he had to make a decision, either leave Egypt or you had to go to war with, you know, Rome. And he said, let me think about it. So what he did was he drew a circle around, all the way around, you know, Antiochus Epiphanes. He said, before you leave the circle, I need the answer. And that's where the term drawing the sign in the draw the line in the sand, drawing the line in the sand. Right? Okay, the water, the brother put it up. Gaius Laenus Papilius. Okay, so the water, bro. You know, and so that's where that term comes from, drawing the line in the sand, from that general. All right. So it says, and so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit, right? Because that's when they were in power, as the Romans. For the earth has thou not judged with truth, right? Because they judge it according to their laws. All right, but they were unfair. You know, I mean, they let nations, you know, govern themselves, but eventually, being that they were in power and their military was stretched so far, they had to devalue their currency, and they also had to put more taxes on the people. This is why, you know, Israel, a lot of those zealots were rebelling against the ancient Roman Empire, because there was a heavy tax being laid upon everybody, you know. And then, you know, if you didn't pay, you know, there were consequences. It says, for thou hast afflicted the meek, which are the Israelites, thou hast hurt the peaceable, the Israelites, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm, right? Because eventually they took down 70 AD, they destroyed, you know, the temple, the people of the Lord, beginning actually in 66. It says, therefore, and even before that, you know, because you had Nero that persecuted the so-called quote-unquote Christians. You had other emperors, you know, and Romans that were persecuting Jake. This is why you had a lot of raids from the zealots, you know, coming against them because of their unrighteous dealings that they were bringing upon Jake back then. It says, therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, because at that time they were going to be judged. This is why it said that they were hit with a deadly wound. It says, yep, that's a good precept right there. Matthew 11:12. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. That's right. It says, therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also hath looked upon the proud times, right, because Esau is proud, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. And this is a key right here. And his abominations are fulfilled. Because when we go to Matthew 24 and around the 15th verse, it says, Yahushua was speaking to the disciples because they asked him, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? He says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So pretty much this was the abomination being fulfilled when they came into into Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. So this is when the abominations were fulfilled. The abomination that maketh desolate. That goes back to the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter. And Daniel, the 9th chapter, was also fulfilled back then during the Roman Empire. You have these wacky-tacky Christians that say it's talking about now. It's not talking about now. It's not talking about the 7-year tribulation. There's no such thing as 7-year tribulation in the Bible. That was talking about back then. All right? And this time, should I say, that there's no 7-year tribulation. You know, back then you had Jake that was catching hell under the hands of the Roman Empire, and that's when it was fulfilled. And therefore appear no more thou eagle, right? Because eventually what happened? They fell. Nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. Why? Because they were brought down for a period of 1,000 years. You know, and once that the Roman Empire fell, that was it. That was the end of this prophecy. It says that all the earth may be refreshed, meaning the known world may be refreshed. Because even those barbarians were catching hell from the Romans because the Romans were trying to invade them, you know, and their lands. This is why you had all of these lands over here, which were controlled by what they call Germanic tribes, and the Romans came and took all of that. All right. It says, and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. Right. Because eventually, once you fell, this is why the Apostle Paul said, you know, matter of fact, let's finish out with that. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Let's start at the 3rd verse. So that no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first. And that falling away first took place beginning around 66 AD, but really fulfilled in 70 AD and a little beyond that. But a key date is 70 AD. And that man of sin be revealed, which are the Edomites, the son of perdition, because they were going to eventually be destroyed, because they were created to be the wicked and eventually to be destroyed. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called the Most High, or that is worshipped, so that he as the Most High sitteth in the temple of the Most High, showing himself that he is the Most High. This doesn't fit any other nation of people but the so-called white men, the Edomites, because they're the ones that put themselves up as being the Most High, Yahushua, the angels, the Israelites, so on and so forth. Anything that has to do with being holy. Then it says, remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. So the Apostle Paul told them that this was going to happen. And now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. Because at this time, when this happened, this probably was roughly around 60 AD or so, around this circa. And not too long in the distant future, that's when this prophecy was about to be fulfilled. So what was the Apostle Paul doing? He was preparing the minds of these Israelite foreigners to get their mind ready for what was coming. You know? Just like today, the prophets are giving warning to you Israelites out there of the things that are coming before they come, so that you could be mentally prepared for what's coming. It says, and now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time, right? Because there's certain things that were held back until the time that they were revealed. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, because the Lord, the Roman Empire was a part of that mystery of iniquity, and the Lord allowed them. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. Because at that time they were taken out of the way, and eventually now in these times they will be finally taken away, period. All right? So pretty much, that's the main point. This scripture in 2nd Ezra's, the 11th chapter and the 12th chapter, is talking about the ancient Roman Empire. The whole compass of the earth is a so-called known world at the time, as we read here. The known world. It says the extent of geographical knowledge of a given culture at a given historical period. See History of Geography. Early world maps lists a number of maps showing the known world from the perspective of various historical periods, because that's all they knew. And eventually, as their knowledge increased and as they, conquered other lands, they were able to write more and make maps and extend the maps more. Until now, you see they have a world map of all the lands, on the planet, because they finally conquered the whole world. But at this time, they had only conquered, the world of the East, the Middle East, and the East in general. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.